part two. My mixer is a bit of a wasteland from last night. We were on with Weatherbrains, and the mixer and the technical stuff required a lot of tweaking and setup and stuff like that. But it did go pretty well, and I'm pretty happy with things. I broke the cardinal rule of public speaking, and that's stay well hydrated. So my voice was given out just a little bit, but otherwise the technical stuff went great, and I was pretty pleased how that all came out. And I think if you missed that, they're going to be rebroadcasting that sometime this week. I think that's when the podcast comes out. I'm not too familiar with the schedules, the way they do it, but I'm sure that'll be out soon. Anyway, how's everybody doing? Did y'all have a good Monday? We don't have very much going on here in the U.S. This is the SPC outlook, and just marginal for the northern plains. We had a slight risk earlier for the Washington, D.C. and Pittsburgh area. A couple little lines of thunderstorms, and let's check that out on radar. This is the Norfolk radar, showing some storms there in the Delmarva area of the East Coast region, and here we've got another little multi-cell line out over western Virginia there. I guess that'll be out about Richmond. No, Richmond's right there. Let's see, going out that way, Roanoke. Okay. My geography is not that great out east. And then in the northeast U.S., we've also got some storms around western Pennsylvania. And there they are, and you can see that there's probably not a whole lot of severe weather with these. The stronger cells are going to be here in southeast Ohio. Pretty quiet on the Great Plains, and this is the run-through of the surface chart. The green is going to be the dew points, and the little red dotted lines, those are potential temperature. So that's helpful for finding frontal boundaries. Let's start from south to north. We'll just kind of start with the moisture. We can see 70s dew points offshore there, falling off into the 60s inland. And then out over West Texas, we'll just kind of pan out that way. And we've got 50s dew points there in West Texas. But that's actually pretty low for this time of year, especially with that easterly flow in that region. What's happened is we've moved the dry line pretty far west. It's all the way out over the high plains of New Mexico and around Guadalupe Peak there. We've got probably what you might call a secondary dry line kind of out in this region, where we go from 50s up to maybe upper 60s there. But it's not very well defined, and there's not convergence. It's basically just a large, broad area of easterly flow there. So I can't really put a boundary in that region. But if I was looking for a weak cap and maybe some severe potential, I might try to track down a few key boundaries in this region here. Since basically the nose of your richer moisture is going to be a favorite area, like right here, that would be a favorite area for storm development. And we could probably put like maybe a secondary dry line. No, I probably wouldn't do that. That's really splitting hairs there. Okay, going up north. Lots of 80s and 50s, 60s dew points. And then going up to the northern plains, that's where we pick up a little bit of frontal boundary and moisture. A little evapotranspiration from that region. 66 to 68 dew points up there around Yankton, South Dakota. And maybe a little bit of convergence in this area here, and upslope flow really pronounced up there in South Dakota. So this is obviously a favorite area where this moisture gets into the higher terrain. 60s dew points around Rapid City, that's going to be pretty significant there. And then frontal boundaries, we use the dashed lines to find those, and certainly shows up right there in eastern New Mexico. So I might go with a boundary right there. You can see that if you go either side of that line, out here we only find maybe 1 or 2 lines, but on this side we find maybe 4 to 5 there. So we've got a very strong gradient in that area. We put the front on the south side of that gradient. And that falls right in line with the Weather Prediction Center placement there. And we could probably trace that even all the way back up into northwestern Nebraska. Okay, going into our NHC panel here. Still looking at that little depression down there off the coast of Belize, still expected to move into the Gulf. They've got a 50% chance of cyclone formation. So we'll take a look at that on the GFS panels in a bit. But across the southeastern U.S., just a lot of patchy, scattered thunderstorm activity from East Texas all the way back to Georgia, where they're getting some pretty heavy rain. Starting with the upper air pattern, there's that pesky low right there in Nevada. It's not helping us out here on the Great Plains. Down to the south, there's our polar front jet from just south of San Diego to about Phoenix and then up to Grand Junction. Maybe I'll bring that into southeastern Wyoming, kind of like that. And then we pick up another segment from about north Nebraska out to New York. But the main ribbon of polar front jet activity is way up to the north, across the northern Prairie provinces into James Bay there. And then we can also see that ridging extending northwestward from Texas. So the placement on that ridge is going to run something like that right there. This is kind of a medium scale ridge. I wouldn't call that a shortwave ridge or anything like that, because we can certainly have small shortwave troughs moving through that flow, through the ridge, kind of flattening out and emerging on the other side. So this ridge here is going to be kind of stationary, unlike the shortwaves, which migrate more quickly through the flow. In fact, there's a rule of thumb when you're at 500 millibars, like you see right here. I need to get a proper graphics tablet. That's not working there. Yeah, 500 millibars. We use 50% of that flow to come up with a movement for shortwaves. That's off the screen. Okay, 50% at 500 millibars. So we see 50 knots right there at Grand Junction, about 80 in Flagstaff, so we take 50% of that. That's going to be about 30 to 40 knots. So any shortwaves moving through that flow, they'll be moving at about 30 knots. And since we're looking at the upper air patterns on a 12 to 24-hour basis, that means we're going to find that wave, assuming we have a wave in there somewhere. This is just kind of an example. We would expect to see that moving about 600 to 700 miles downstream. So you might wonder how to estimate 700 miles looking at this chart. There's a rule of thumb that we use a lot in analysis. It's 1 degree of latitude per 60 nautical miles. And if you have a rough idea where the basic meridians and parallels are, like 30 is right here, that's 30 degrees north. 40 is going to run kind of like that right there. That gives you a distance of 600 nautical miles. So you want to use latitude for this. So that's going to be 600 nautical miles there between that and that. So I can take maybe a line like that for 700 miles. So if we have a wave like right there, I would use that distance and kind of estimate downstream. That's going to be about right there. So that can be pretty handy when you're looking at upper level charts there. Using some of the latitude and longitude grids, those actually come in handy. So if you have them on your charts, you can make use of those. Okay, let's see, 700 millibars, we'll check that out, and we see, looks like some 30-knot flow there in West Texas and New Mexico. The 700 millibar temperatures are still kind of in the moderate range. Nothing over 10 degrees Celsius, so I don't see a nuclear cap or anything like that, but they are running about 7 and 9, which is getting into the moderate to strong side. The weaker cap is up to the north. Eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, seeing 700 millibar temperatures there ranging from 2 to 5 Celsius in that region. And then at 850 millibars, this is where we check up on the low-level flow. We got 14 there at Del Rio, 14 at Midland. That's going to be about 57 Fahrenheit. And then that falls off to lower 50s around Dallas and Amarillo. And then as low as 34 to 37 at North Platte and Rapid City. So basically the very rich moisture is flowing north up the Rio Grande and Pecos River region, up towards Tucumcari and Dalhart. Looks like there is a little moisture in the southeast U.S., 12 to 14. That's going to be 50s dew points, but very weak wind flow, 5 to 10 knots there. So that's not going to really be going very far. 5 knots in one day, that's only going to be about 100 miles, which is basically about probably a little less than that there. So it's very minute. So this is where we have the thickness in isobars, and this gives us a chance to check out the progression of the air masses. So it looks like our ribbons of strong gradients are pretty far to the north. It's getting to be that time of the year where we see those mostly in Canada and the Gulf of Alaska there. We did have that very weak front come into New Mexico and Arizona. That's probably just about fizzled out there, but we do see a little bit of thermal troughing in California, Nevada there, and let's see, let me take a close look at the patterns. Yeah, this is kind of a, I think that's kind of a weak, that's kind of an area of low thickness right in that area, so I might call that kind of a thermal trough, and that would support an upper level trough in that area. So that's helping to support that little low that we have in that region. The thermal axis, that extends over the Great Plains. There it is right there. And that's where the thickness kind of pokes north like that. Another one pokes north into southwest South Dakota there, and we just put our thermal ridge axis right in that area. So that could be an area where we have an unfavorable area for thunderstorms, and if storms do go up, they will often tend to be isolated and a little bit elevated and kind of outflowish. So frontal boundaries, there's one right there, Quebec, Ontario, another one in northern Saskatchewan, all the way up to Yellowknife. So there's that front right there. And yeah, that same boundary extends from about Fort Nelson down to about Comox as a cold front. So that's probably not going to be bothering us here in the U.S. unless we get a lot of cold air developing behind it as it moves through the prairie provinces. So it's too early to tell that just based on this thickness chart. That's pretty far out there. Okay, this would be a good time to break and look at the satellite. So I've got a couple of good ones here. This is New Mexico. So this is showing activity developing around 4 p.m. out around Roswell. This probably got launched off the mountains here, just east of Alamogordo. And there it is. You can see it moving eastward. And it looks like there's some fairly decent moisture. We definitely like seeing a low cloud field like what you see here. That isn't always the case on the Great Plains. In fact, if we just pan up to the north, yeah, up here in the, actually, let me go a little further north. Oh, that's east. Okay, never mind. Anyway, we do get a lot of situations where the air mass is pretty clear, devoid of low clouds. So this is likely to support these storms for maybe at least a couple of hours. Looks like a little bit of upper air support. You can see those anvils streaming out to the northeast. That's a sign that there's some upper level winds working on that there. So I would expect some of these storms to continue probably till about midnight as they move into far west Texas. But they're not going to make it anywhere near Oklahoma City or Dallas. And then a look out east. This goes from East Texas to Mississippi, showing those popcorn storms in that area. Shreveport is located about right here where the cursor is. Longview is here, Texarkana is here, and then Dallas is going to be off to the edge. So basically anywhere that the storms can find a boundary, we get development along those, and that gives us these popcorn cells that we see in that area. Up to the north, it looks like there's kind of a more organized structure. See that little arc feature right there? There's probably a little, yeah, there it is right there. You can see that there. So those storms up there are going to be a little bit more organized for sure. Let me go up to the top so you can see that a little bit better. And that's what you need to look for on these visible satellite charts here. So boundaries like that that have kind of a linear orientation, unlike a lot of these cells here. They're just going up wherever there's even the slightest boundary. It could be a river circulations or very slight orography or discontinuities in the moisture field. Okay, I don't think I see much going on in Mississippi, but there are storms further east in Georgia. Yeah, there's a few right there around Jackson. Okay, here's the infrared. So I'll leave it at that and see what's going on in chat tonight. Sue M was watching Weatherbrains, and I appreciate the comments there. We got Fun with Tech and Nuke NATO. Welcome to the webcast. Willie Greenway checking in from Georgia. We've got Ryan Toomey's here. Erica Baker reporting 84 there in Coffeyville. Clyde Hoadley seeing a few storms out there. Nuke NATO's picture is the Jarrell EF5. Shirley Keast, appreciate the comments there, 73 in Michigan. Mick saw me on Weatherbrains, I appreciate that. Ryan Toomey's reporting the 7-year anniversary of the Joplin EF5. We should certainly take a retrospective of that and maybe look at some radar. That might be good for one of these slow days here. Nuke NATO reporting 93. Mike R. checking in from San Francisco. Minnesota Medic Joe from Minneapolis, 70 degrees. Michelle Curlin, appreciate the comments there. Adam Davis, 65. And I forgot where Adam Davis is. Mike Estwick, 78 in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Carl Berghoff checking in there, and Mike Estwick saying that the Weatherbrains Multicast rocked. Thank you very much. Let me just scroll down here real quick. There's a little bit of panicking about the sound, so I think we got that cleared up there. Yeah, we had to recycle the stream earlier, or reset that. That was a lot of fun there. My mixing board was a little bit misconfigured from last night. So let's see. Let me just scroll down. Mike R. chatting from a cool early summer in San Francisco. Adam Davis has some small cells up there around Interstate 80. And David Lumbert asking about Weatherbrains. We recorded that last night, starting about 7:45 Central, and we went into about 9:10 p.m. But I don't know what time they put the video online, so your guess is as good as mine. Mick says the YouTube stream should be available. Weatherbrains website, about 48 hours lag from the show, but YouTube is up pretty quick. Okay, that's good to know. So thank you, Mike Estwick and Mick there. And Douglas Crandall asking, where do we get our charts from? It's a huge array of different sources. We've got nasa.gov for this one right here. This chart here, this is digital atmosphere. You can go and buy that at weathergraphics.com. And that's a program that I actually coded. And I don't think I have the source code up right now, but I've been doing some work on that there. So different websites there. Mike R. asking about Hawaii, the plume of volcanic ash. I don't have any Hawaii sectors up, but I do have... I was going to cover a little bit of European weather because there's some stuff going on there, but I could probably just pan over and look at Hawaii. So they're going to be, let's see here. Yeah, there they are right there. I don't know if we're going to see any plume from this stuff. I've been a little bit out of touch with the news here, so I'm not too sure where this volcano is. I'm guessing it must be on the Big Island there. So let me check between Aqua Terra and Suomi. See if anything comes up. We don't have the Aqua in. Still kind of early in Hawaii. Yeah, let me just check yesterday's. No, I'm not seeing much of anything. If it's not on the Big Island, let me know there. I guess this is kind of like a very small eruption, or at least relatively small there. Seems like everybody else is looking pretty good there. So let me set this back onto Europe. Because, yeah, we do have a little bit of weather chart stuff, and maybe I'll just bring that up right now. Because they are getting some storms out there, and what we had in Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas today reminded me a little bit of what they got up in France there. So to give you your bearings, this is France here. This is Belgium. The blue is Germany there, up in the corner. And then up here we have England. There's Wales, and that's pretty much everybody. There's a little bit of Switzerland right there. So this is starting out this morning about 10 a.m. local. Paris is located about right there. Okay, so that should give you your bearings there. And we'll go ahead and play this, and you'll see some storms popping up here. And remember, this air mass here is relatively uncapped in Europe. They don't have that big plateau that we've got in Arizona and New Mexico. That's really instrumental for getting severe weather going in the U.S., but they don't have anything like that there. What they do have, though, is a very deep southerly flow. And let me take you to the upper level charts and show you what that looks like. And yeah, here it is right here. This is going to be the 500 millibar analysis, and thanks to wixcharts.eu. I'll give you that link right there up at the top, wxcharts.eu. So this is something new that we've got here. So this is the 500 millibar heights and vorticity. This is going to be close to jet stream. I mean, we can make interpretations of the jet stream from this pretty easy. So what we've got here is a little upper level low over western France. And down on the low levels, we've got kind of a very long fetch of southerly wind. So what that gives us is kind of a differential advection pattern. Down at the low levels, we've got this warm air coming in from the south. In the upper levels, we've got this residual cool air. So that gives us kind of a cool over warm situation, which means unstable. And of course, when we have an upper level low in the vicinity, that's basically a cold pool aloft, and that gives us kind of like a little bit of extra cold over warm. So let's see, let's run this through. There's that upper level low spinning in that area. But you can see that the main jet action is well to the south. It's over Morocco up to Spain. And then it kind of goes across the Mediterranean like that. But one of the runs was indicating some of this jet stream energy making it up into France towards Friday and Saturday. And maybe a little bit of severe potential will get going in that area right there in northern France. Yeah, you see that right there, that southerly flow. And there are some short waves embedded in that flow. There's one right there. And here's another good short wave back over Spain. And just to give you the upper air, the scutees. Let's go over and show you that there. Do those scutees stretch? No, I guess they don't. So I'll just shrink that back there. They give you a nice little photograph too. I kind of like that. So let's look over northern France here. We're going to look at the scutee. Let me move that over. And what it looked like today was like this. This is around 6 p.m. there. And there you can see very good moisture, at least for them. This is like low 50s dew points. So we get an LCL, about 4,000 feet right there, and then our parcel moist adiabat runs kind of like that right there. Gives us some CAPE, maybe 500 to 1,000 CAPE there. And Looks like a little bit of 20 to 30 knot flow aloft. And then later in the week, yeah, you can see how the upper level flow really picks up there and the hodograph stretches out. So maybe around Thursday or Friday, we could be looking at some severe weather in that area. Yeah, there's 50 knots right there. So anyway, that'll be coming a little bit later. And then the surface chart looks like this. This is our rare peek at weather in that area. Looks like a little surface low over Belgium around there. And because of all this cool air sitting over the UK and Denmark and the Baltics, this is all kind of a cold air mass. I think basically what we have is kind of a front, kind of a warm front sitting through, kind of like that right there. And maybe a little cold front. So a couple of boundaries through that area. So let's show you what happened as the day went on. Well, we did show you that loop earlier, but I really like this Aqua and Terra imagery. Yeah, there goes those storms earlier today, and some really nice long anvils. And I think maybe the GFS may be underestimating the upper level winds a little bit, because those are some, you can see those streaming out to the northeast. So definitely some very good cells, and I think we were, yeah, there's a boundary right there. And you really have to have this really fine visible imagery to pick out those boundaries. That's probably that little front through that area. And then, yeah, you can see those storms going up along that boundary. And those three images are about all we got. The UK, England, they're back there in that high pressure area. Some northerly flow. It's kind of dry, and that gives them some fine weather in that region. Very dry and mild, and pretty much the same thing over Scandinavia. All right, back to the U.S. Just one quick look out in the western U.S. And there we can see that upper level low there over Nevada, just kind of spinning around out there. And the jet just basically rotating around the south side of that low. The main storm track is well up to the north, and we see a little bit of that up in the Gulf of Alaska. So those are pretty much out of reach for the U.S. And then I've got a water vapor imagery. Water vapor image. I guess that should be singular. You can really pick out that upper level low. It's been spinning out there for many, many days, so it's got this very spiraled appearance out there. And we're bringing a little bit of upper level dry air into Texas. But these thunderstorms over West Texas and New Mexico, they're dumping moisture into the upper levels, so that's given us this band that we see across West Texas out in that region. That's where some of the moisture has hit the upper levels. So maybe when we look at Amarillo, we may see a little bit of that in the upper levels there. And there's all that tropical moisture there over the southeast U.S. So maybe we can pull up a couple soundings. I think maybe I'll pull up Las Vegas in the vicinity of that low. I'll pull up Amarillo and Fort Worth, and maybe we'll do Rapid City. We'll kind of do those to keep it simple. Okay, let's see if tonight's data is in 23 at 0Z. Maybe we can look at a couple soundings in Europe as well. All right, so get this all cleared out and ready. Okay, starting out for Fort Worth. Slightly tropical in this area. Definitely a lot like June. And what we see here is low 60s dew points. And you can see you've really got to get away from that surface dew point and start looking a little bit at what's above the surface. So the surface dew point is running about 19 Celsius. So that's going to be about 66 Fahrenheit, but right off the surface, you've only got 16. That's about 61 Fahrenheit. So you've got a 5-degree drop there in the dew point. That's going to have a huge effect on your parcel lifts. So really, for a parcel lift, we have to select this line way over to the left. So that's going to bring us up higher for the LCL. And our parcel lifts look kind of like this here. So long and skinny, very common for summer. And the LCL, it's up there at about 7,000 to 8,000 feet. So the storms are a little bit high-based. It could be a little bit different, though, as you get out into East Texas, because there is more moisture as you go east. Here's Dallas, 64, 69, 66, 67, and we got 70s lurking out here. So the moisture is probably a little bit deeper, and that would have more of an impact on the soundings and bring the LCLs down a little bit. So not quite as high based in that area. Okay, Las Vegas, they're near that upper level low. Come on, Vegas. There we go. Very, very steep lapse right there. So that's showing very strong heating and maybe some air mass modification. Lots of dry air, 30s and 20s dew points. However, some very high humidities. So very likely we've got a little bit of mid-cloud, some altocumulus at maybe 14,000, 15,000 feet, and this little inversion here, a little bit of subsidence aloft, and that'll help that stuff stratify and spread. Maybe if this unstable layer, if that was a little bit deeper, we'd probably have maybe some elevated showers and maybe some wind gusts from that, maybe a few microbursts, but we're pretty well capped as far as that goes, and that would keep that shut down there. But some upper level winds, 30, 40 knot winds, even 50 around the base of that trough there. Okay, Rapid City. This is up north, and that's close to that nose of moisture. We've got dew points 40s and lower 50s. And let's try to lift that, see what happens. A little bit of capping and some cape there. It's probably about 500 to 1,000 cape there. So definitely some shower potential in that area. And then just off to the west, probably a little bit more moisture, because we saw that moisture nose was very close to Rapid City. So basically as you go east, you start getting into these mid and upper 60s dew points, so that can really bring your moisture line over to the right a bit. So if we lift from like a 63 dew point, do we have 63? Yeah, well, low 60s. Let's try lifting from low 60s just to see what happens. Lifted parcel is way over to the right, and the cape is definitely a lot higher. So it kind of shows you a little bit of moisture can really help things out quite a bit. And then Amarillo. You can see a little bit of that moisture up at about 30,000 feet from that blow-off, and very dry conditions in that area. Dew points are basically in the 40s right off the surface, and any convection going up around Amarillo is going to be pretty high based, up above 10,000 feet. So basically all that stuff coming out of New Mexico, that stuff's definitely going to be kind of elevated. Let's try out Europe. I'm kind of curious if we can get one of those charts going. University of Wyoming is very good for that. 12Z. Okay, got to set that to skew T. So this is the Paris sounding. So definitely uncapped. As soon as we get convection going up, that's going to develop into towering cumulus and showers and storms. And the moisture, basically 40s dew points. So it is a little bit cool. Temperatures right around 70. It's definitely a cooler climate. The parcel lifts are going to run like that, kind of short and skinny. Looking at basically threshold thunderstorm instability and a little bit of 20 to 30 knot winds aloft. But those did look like they were stronger as you get into Germany. Yeah, there we are. We pick up some 30 to 35 knot winds in that area. One more parcel lift for the road there. That's about as good as I can do just drawing with a mouse. But yeah, long skinny cape. So these are definitely not severe weather type skew Ts. But maybe with the addition of those stronger upper level winds later in the week, that might get some stuff going there. So that brings us to our forecast. Okay, starting out, I'm going to start with the NAM and look at the upper level pattern, because the upper levels are kind of the key to everything that's going on. And this shows us the very important upper level winds. Where we have stronger upper level winds, that's going to help with the storm severity and give us more organized cells. So instead of having air mass storms, we might have like multi-cell lines and clusters and that kind of thing. So the stronger upper level winds are still over the Four Corners and Arizona region. And let's see if that goes anywhere over the next 24 hours. Not really. You can see it goes mostly up into the northern plains, Wyoming and the western Dakota regions. And it looks like that low ejects northward. So by tomorrow, it's over Wyoming. There's still a lot of troughiness out to the west, though, so that's going to kind of keep the pattern kind of locked, basically like that for a few days. And another ominous problem, look at this 585 decameter line. I'm going to draw this. See how that's over Texas and Arkansas? Look where that 585 line ends up in a few days. So you see how that builds? Those are height rises, and that's a good signal for warming. And in this part of the country, ridging, weaker winds aloft, and less chance of rain. Now, we are going to have some rain in Texas because the Gulf is kind of wide open. But as far as organized storms along the dry line, that's going to kind of keep things shut down for a while. So some more ridging builds in for about Thursday. Very strong trough coming on shore around Thursday also. And that'll break down the ridge somewhat going into the weekend. We're still under that ridge going into the weekend, but looks like maybe around Sunday or Monday we might see some of these stronger upper level winds working into Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah there. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is interesting. I didn't see this here. Looks like a little bit of, this, first of all, this troughing here, that's kind of a new feature. I don't think that was on the charts a few days ago. You can see how that moves out into the Gulf. Looks like things get kind of unstable out in the Gulf, and probably a lot of latent heat release across this region here. The warm ocean waters right off the shore helping with that, and that's going to help probably get some sort of circulation going in that region. So that's basically going to be sitting off the coast of Louisiana there, and that will help bring the flow around to the north in Texas. Okay, and depending on what the flow is like at the surface in Texas, if we have storms moving to the north, that can really elongate the hodograph with that northerly flow aloft there. So let's see if we can check out the soundings, see what the hodograph looks like. And it appears that, a little bit of, well, 20 knots, that's not very good there, but you can see there is a little bit of slight elongation there towards the south on the hodograph. Let me try to pull up a better example here. I'll click on Houston there. This is for Thursday going into Friday. And a little bit of elongation there towards the south. And we're basically going from calm to northerly at 20 there. The storms could have a motion up to the well, I guess that's not going to happen this time around because the entire column is from the south. So anyway, we're not going to worry about that. I guess we're looking at southward moving storms going in towards the weekend. Okay, for the NAM, very stagnant weather pattern. Looks like more showers redeveloping in New Mexico tomorrow. Some more showers up for the northern plains. You can see no MCS overnight, not much of one. So it's very quiet there. Things looking pretty unsettled there in the Gulf. Thursday and a Friday. Yeah, there's a circulation right there moving into the central Gulf. For Friday, looks like a little bit of a heat low there in southwestern Kansas. In fact, let me drop a sounding right in the middle of that. Right around Dodge City. Look at that sounding there. Almost 100 degrees there at Dodge City. Just absolutely dry adiabatic lapse rate up to about 14,000 feet. That's probably very good gliding weather if you're flying gliders or something like that. So not really any chance of storms there in Kansas, but we've got that trough moving onshore. Look at that right there. So probably a cold front coming inland, maybe something like that for the weekend. NAM bringing that little disturbance towards Louisiana. All right, so we'll switch over to the GFS, and we'll pick that up around Thursday or Friday. GFS is not so bullish with that track towards Louisiana. It kind of hangs back and brings something into Florida later. See right here around Sunday. That's that system we've been kind of keeping a watch on for the past week or so. Then checking out over California, looks like a little bit of snow there in the Sierra Nevadas. Cold front will be trying to come across the Rockies, but it looks like that's going to be carried mostly, yeah, that'll be carried eastward into Arizona around Sunday, maybe a bit of a cool down there for Phoenix. The question is, when is that going to come out into the plains? Well, it's probably going to be sometime next week. I can see the lee side troughing there in Colorado starting up around Monday, the increase in shower activity in Montana and Wyoming as that approaches. And then now we see things coming together around Tuesday, Monday and Tuesday, 28th, 29th there. Okay, so probably some storms starting to become organized there in Colorado. Maybe some overnight MCSs into Kansas. And it looks like initially it's just a lot of Central Plains type action. GFS going for a little bit of outbreak there in the Red River Tuesday night. And then it looks like the frontal system moves eastward Thursday towards the Midwest in that region there. And just more hot weather. It looks like a lot of ridging holding in place over the next week. So let me just check real quick on the upper levels. We'll look at these upper level heights and just see what the jet stream's doing for next week and the week after. Because this is kind of an unfortunate weather pattern we're stuck in. You can see how this jet stream segment affects mostly the high plains up north around Wednesday. So we're looking at the ridge here in Texas. A little help from the subtropical jet that's kind of nosing northward. That's always a good thing to have if you're looking for storms. And then here comes our Pacific system starting around the weekend. That definitely moves moves inland. And then it moves into New Mexico and Colorado. The flow starts increasing there starting around Sunday night. So that's going to be about when we're going to start having an impact. And then most of the energy heading, well, some of it's splitting off into Texas. So that does lend some support for the Red River around Monday. So I would expect probably just an overall general increase starting with the Panhandles and eastern Colorado, western Kansas for early next week. And it looks like the ridge breaks down kind of temporarily. You can see how starting around Sunday we're under this ridge. See that ridging pattern right there? In fact, I'll draw the ridge in red. That breaks down around Monday, and we start getting into this cyclonic flow. So this is when the chances of storms are going to increase. And then we start getting those height rises starting around Wednesday. We can see those building in there. See how they kind of move north? So that'll kind of shut things down and move the activity up into the Central Plains. One last hurrah there. Jet stream segment moving into Kansas around Thursday. maybe the Panhandles, western Oklahoma. Yeah, basically this area right here. So maybe some weather around Thursday, and then things may shut down south, but this is a very strong jet stream coming in very quickly around Friday and Saturday. So we may get some very organized storms there in the Central Plains towards next weekend. And possibly with this slight northerly component, that might help some of that activity move south. So some of that may graze Oklahoma and possibly the Red River area after that weekend there. So depending on how amplified this pattern gets, especially around here, we could see some northwesterly flow storms in the Great Plains. That'd be around the 4th and 5th. Then things go more zonal towards the 7th, and then the ridge builds in a little bit. So we do have a little bit of potential there for storms around the end of next week, and some isolated chances here and there. So anyway, that's kind of the big picture there, and hopefully that helps you out quite a bit. So let me take a quick look at chat. Yeah, I appreciate that, Carl Burkhoff, about Weatherbrains there. Ryan Toomey's mentioning Florida will need life drafts and life preservers by Saturday. Yeah, with that new system coming in. Huge eruption, massive, multiple lava fountains. Do you all know the VEI on that eruption? I mean, I would think that we would have seen that on the satellite picture unless it's a very new eruption. But I'll definitely check that out when we get off the stream. And just scrolling through the chat here. Little discussion there about the volcano. Carl Berghoff passing on that MedEd link. So yeah, there are some good resources there at MedEd. And Sue M. going to the boondocks there. Pacific blast coming in from the northwest. And yeah, a little discussion there about training, and I've also got my books here. Let me just put that link up real quick. I'm not sure if that showed up last night. There it is. Weathergraphics.com. You can get the books that I've got here, and that's got the link to the Weathercast, of course, and the training that I do. So you can actually buy time and get training with the things that you need help with. So anyway, yeah, feel free to check that out. All right, that's about all getting ahead of myself here. That's about all I have for tonight. I appreciate y'all joining, and hopefully we'll see y'all tomorrow. So y'all take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Have a good one.